Week number 10 of the 2025 fantasy football season is upon us. We have 4 teams on bye this week: the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Titans, and the Kansas City Chiefs. In today's video, I'm going to help you guys figure out who you want to start and who you want to sit at quarterback this week. We're going to be breaking down every single matchup from Thursday night all the way up until Monday Night Football. And I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the quarterbacks in all those games, as well as where I believe they'll finish by the end of the week. Before we could get into things, though, please make sure if you are new to the channel and you don't enjoy today's video that you hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Las Vegas Raiders at the Denver Broncos. Now, Bo Nix has turned things up a notch since week number 7. Quarterback 1 up against the Giants in that week 7 game, the crazy comeback. Quarterback 6 up against the Cowboys in week 8. And the quarterback 14 last week in Houston in the hardest matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, scoring 19.5 fantasy points. So facing up against a Raiders defense that just got sliced up by Trevor Lawrence, Jack the Ripper style, and allow the 14th most points to quarterbacks on a per game basis, Bo Nix is a must-start top 8 option for me at the quarterback position. Geno Smith came alive last week up against the Jaguars like his name was Frankenstein. Quarterback 6 up against the Jaguars with 29 completions on 39 attempts for 284 yards and 4 touchdowns with 1 interception, as well as 5 rushes for 9 yards. It would appear that getting Brock Bowers back and healthy in this offense is going to make them perform significantly better. The problem now is they are facing up against a defense that is the 3rd worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis. So while now there is a new hope, shout out to Princess Leia, for the Raiders offense moving forward, in this spot, I would not touch Geno Smith with a 10-foot pole. Now we move to Berlin, Germany. Get your bratwursts out. The Atlanta Falcons at the Indianapolis Colts, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is our Colts. This is our team. We bleed blue. Daniel Jones absolutely sucked it up last week up against the Steelers in Pittsburgh, playing like the old version of Daniel Jones from 2 years ago in New York. 31 of 50 for 342 yards and a touchdown with 3 interceptions, as well as 3 rushes for 4 yards and a touchdown. Despite him looking like straight up ass, he was able to garbage time his way to a quarterback 17 finish. Prior to last week, he was a top 11 quarterback in 3 straight games. So while the matchup here is difficult on paper, the Falcons allow the 27th most points to quarterbacks on a per game basis, you still have to lean into Daniel Jones. I got Indianapolis Jones as a low-end quarterback 1 this week. Michael Penix Jr. has been all over the place this season. We have seen some real good showings in some games where the guy looks like he's blind. Last week was one of those big games as the quarterback 11 in Foxborough up against the Patriots with 22 completions on 37 attempts for 221 yards and 3 touchdowns with 2 rushes for 19 yards, facing the Colts, who allow the 18th most points to quarterbacks on a per game basis. I think if you are in a pickle, you could rely on him in this spot, but based on my criteria of a top 18 quarterback being listed as a start, Penix falls slightly outside of this range. Now we move to Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the New York Football Giants at the Chicago Bears. Now, if Malik Neighbors was healthy, I am fully convinced that Jackson Dart would be a top 5 quarterback weekly in my rankings. There are so many times where Jackson Dart throws an absolute missile, a beautifully placed ball, and guys are just dropping it. Dart, even with the wide receiver core being as, bad as he has at his disposal, he has still been cooking. Top 7 quarterback in 3 of the last 4 games, with 2 games as the quarterback number 3. Last week, he was the quarterback 7 up against the Niners with 24 completions on 33 attempts for 191 yards and 2 touchdowns with 8 rushes for 56 yards and a touchdown. 4 straight games now for Mr. Dart with a rushing touchdown, facing the Bears defense that allows the 6th most points to quarterbacks on a per game basis that just got absolutely destroyed by Joe Flacco last week. I expect yet another top 8 showing for Jackson Dart. Caleb Williams and Joe Flacco got into a rock'em sock'em robots fight last week where absolutely 0 defense was played. Quarterback 1 in Cincinnati with 20 completions on 34 attempts for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns with 5 rushes for 53 yards, as well as catching both of his targets for 22 yards and a touchdown in their crazy 47-42 win. Caleb has had 4 great matchups in a row now and has been a top 10 quarterback in 2 of those 4 games. He has a great matchup again here this week up against the Giants, who allow the 6 most points to quarterbacks on a per game basis. So while he is as inconsistent as it gets in a matchup like this, after what we saw last week, which looks like the best Caleb Williams has ever looked in his NFL career, I am willing to roll the dice on him as a top 10 option. Now we move to the Buffalo Bills at the Miami Dolphins. Now, Josh Allen had the Chiefs defense wishing Josh Allen retired, as Steve Spagnuolo told him after the game. Quarterback 3 with 23 completions on 26 attempts for 273 yards and 1 touchdown, as well as 6 rushes for 19 yards and 2 touchdowns. And while Josh Allen hasn't necessarily lived up to the Gawk Gawk 9,000 special that everyone gave him this summer, he is still a must-start top 3 option every single week. And facing his sons, the Miami Dolphins, this week, who he was the quarterback 5 up against back in week number 3, I think Josh Allen puts up belt to ass numbers as a locked and loaded top 2 option at quarterback, and he's not 2. He is my quarterback 1 this week. Tua, turn of the ball over, disappointed me in a big way last week up against the Ravens. You can blame a lot of that on the play calling and his teammates selling the game, constant fumbles, and then when we finally get into position to score a touchdown on 4th down, Mike McDaniel calls a goal line fade to a midget. He threw a goal line fade to fucking Peter Dinklage, to A-Chain, and obviously that doesn't work. Tua was 25 of 40 for 261 yards and an interception. I think it is sadly all over for Tua in Miami. The team is in rebuild mode, and after this season, we may never see him suit up as a Dolphins quarterback again. I love Tua, and I will always support him, but up against the Buffalo Bills in a game where I feel like the team's already ready to wave the white flag, I expect Tua to be on the struggle bus. Leave him on your bench. Now we move to the Baltimore Ravens at the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Now Lamar Jackson was the quarterback 9 last week as he shoved the dagger into the Dolphins' chest like his name was Arya Stark. 18 of 23 in his return from injury. 204 yards and 4 touchdowns with 5 rushes for 14 yards. While the Vikings did just beat the Lions, this is the 20th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, and the Ravens need this game in a bad way. So I expect Lamar Jackson to put his cape on like his name was Clark Kent and slap the Vikings up like his name was Will Smith as a top 2 quarterback. I got him as my quarterback number 2 right behind Josh Allen. JJ McCarthy looked great in his return game from injury last week up against the Lions in Detroit. 14 of 25 for 143 yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 INT, as well as 9 rushes for 12 yards and a score as the quarterback 13. Now we have a 3-game sample size, 2 great games and 1 game where he looked absolutely awful. A 3-game sample size doesn't really mean much. It's hard to get a read off of that. In this week's matchup up against the Ravens, who allow the 9th most points to quarterbacks on a per game basis, in a game that has the ability to be the highest scoring game of the week, you just gotta at least have JJ McCarthy in the quarterback 2 range from quarterbacks 14 through 18. Now we move to the Cleveland Browns at the New York Jumbo Jets. The Jets have absolutely gutted the defense, trading Quentin Williams as well as trading Sauce Gardner to the Indianapolis Colts. QW went to the Dallas Cowboys. Fields is going to have to let it fly going forward. Justin Fields is essentially just a boom or bust quarterback. In his real starts without an injury, he's been the quarterback 2, 4, 7, 30, and 12. He was the quarterback 30 against the Panthers, where he gets hurt and plays 46% of the snaps, and the quarterback 35 up against the Bills, where he played 62% of the snaps. Now, in other matchups, it would be easy for me to bang the drum for Fields, even with his boom or bust tendencies, but up against the Browns, who allow the 26th most points to quarterbacks on a per game basis, I expect Fields to be taking a lot of sacks in this game. At the end of the day, the upside is too high for me to mark him as a sit, but there's no way anyone feels good about him. He's in the quarterback 17 to 18 range. Dillon Gabriel just is not the answer. Shout out to Allen Iverson, 21 completions on 35 attempts prior to the bye up against the Patriots in Foxborough with 156 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 INTs, as well as 1 rush for 13 yards at the quarterback 18. Gabriel has just been asked. Just 2 games with over 10 points and no finishes even close to the top 12. Even in the 11th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis up against the Jets. And the matchup's easier now, right? Because they got rid of all those guys. There is just no way I'm starting Dillon Gabriel. Now we move to the New England Patriots at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Before we break down this game in depth at the quarterback position as well as the rest of the games on this week's slate, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friend star partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you receive a free pick plus a first time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you receive an additional $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. How does the pick'em work? It is incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks picks on the higher or the lower. If those picks hit, you get paid. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher, but all the picks need to hit. Make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, Drake May is on an absolute heater so far this season. The MVP chants are getting louder and louder every single week, and honestly, I think at this point, there's a strong argument to be made that he should be at least in the top 5 conversation. Last week, he was the quarterback 16 in a rough spot up against the Falcons with 19 completions on 29 attempts for 259 yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 INT, as well as 8 rushes for 20 yards. In the 19th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis this week, I expect Drake May to be at minimum a top 10 quarterback. We have seen him finish as a top 5 quarterback in 3 of 9 games. So in a matchup that has the high-scoring upside, I love Drake May, the Iceman, as a top 5 option. Baker Mayfield has been on the struggle bus, which can't be mistaken for the magic school bus that is driven by Miss Frizzle. Back-to-back games as the quarterback 20 or worse, which has me feeling the opposite of nicey, but we can't let 2 down games erase what happened in the first 6 weeks of the season, with Egbuka hopefully more healthy against a Patriots defense that allows the 22nd most points to quarterbacks on a per-game basis. In a game with a 48.5 point over-under, I expect fireworks. Shout out to Katy Perry for both quarterbacks, and I got Baker as a top 8 option. Now we move to the New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers. I said this last week, and I will say it again. Tyler Shuck may be a iota better than Spencer Rattler, but ultimately they are 2 cheeks of the same ass. You will never feel remotely good enough to play Shuck, even in a super flex or 2 quarterback league. Last week, he was 15 of 24 for 176 yards and a touchdown with 1 interception. In the 23rd best matchup for quarterbacks on a per game basis, there is no shot I would start him. Now, on paper, this is a juicy matchup for Bryce Young. This could be the best game for Bryce Young this season. It's the 12th best matchup for quarterbacks, and I am excited to see what Bryce Young can do. But at the end of the day, even in the most perfect, mouth-watering, delectable matchup, I am unwilling to fire up Bryce Young. Just 2 games inside the top 20 this season, and even with Tedero McMillan looking great out there, and with Rico running defenses directly into the dirt, I just can't do it with Bryce Young until he actually shows something to me. Now we move to the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Houston Texans. Trevor Lawrence has ran hot over the last 4 games. Things have looked far different for him over the last few weeks because he actually looks like a competent quarterback. Last week, up against the Raiders in Las Vegas, he had 23 completions on 34 attempts for 220 yards and an interception with 9 rushes for 24 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sadly for T-Law, though, there is no Travis Hunter again this week as he is on the IR, and Brian Thomas Jr.'s health is definitely in question as he is dealing with a low-grade high ankle sprain. The team did trade for Jacoby Myers, but at the end of the day, even with all these things going on around him, in the 32nd best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, I get he's played better, and I'll give him all the credit in the world for that, but in this matchup, stay away. Even if you're in like a 2-quarterback or super flex league, it's okay, I guess, but it still reeks of him potentially being a big bust here. CJ Stroud suffered a concussion last week, and KPRC2's Aaron Wilson believes the expectation is CJ Stroud will not practice on Wednesday or possibly any days this week, and that Davis Mills will be the starter, which would also be my assumption as well based on how bad that concussion looked. Now, I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, but obviously you can kind of just tell with head injuries like, hey, this guy might be fine, or oh my gosh, that was really bad, and that's just instantly what I thought about CJ Stroud. I hope he ends up okay, obviously, and maybe he can return next week up against the Titans, but this week, it would appear it will be Davis, Money, Giraffe Neck Mills. Now, Davis Mills just isn't that good. Now, if the Houston Texans were like the perfect scenario for Davis Mills to come into, if they had all the right pieces around him, then maybe he would actually be able to do something, but that is not how the Houston Texans are set up. I view him as unstartable. Last week, 17 of 30 for 137 yards with 2 rushes for 7 yards against the Denver Broncos. This is the 3rd worst matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, so clear stay away for Davis Mills. Now we move to the 4 o'clock slate on Sunday. Hit that subscribe button down below if you guys have enjoyed today's video. The Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks. For the Arizona Cardinals, I initially recorded this video talking about how maybe Kyler Murray would play based on what Jonathan Gannon was saying. And then it came out just a second ago that Kyler Murray will not be back to play this week and could miss multiple other games after consulting with a couple of doctors. So this elevates Jacoby Brissett to be a high-end quarterback too. He's been a top 12 quarterback in all 3 starts as the quarterback 1 for the Cardinals, and this is the 17th best matchup for quarterbacks. Now, if I'm being honest with you guys, I think one of these days we're going to see an absolute disaster class out of Jacoby Brissett, but the offense seems to be moving much more smoothly with Jacoby under center compared to with Kyler. Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like a new man. He looks like just so much better what we would have expected out of him since he got drafted. Ray McBride is just addicted to scoring touchdowns now. The offense looks a lot better. So while I still have my, worries about who Jacoby Brissett is as a whole as a quarterback over his NFL career, things seem to be working squeaky clean in Arizona. So I got Jacoby Brissett as a high-end quarterback too. And honestly, if you're like, Nick, I got him in the top 12. I don't even think that's all that crazy. Mono man Sam Darnold is looking elite, like his name was Joe Flacco, quarterback 5 last week as he dismantled the Commanders' establishment like that episode of SpongeBob. 21 of 24 for 330 yards and 4 tugs with 1 INT. I do worry about a slight skid here as the Cardinals defense looks so good up against the Cowboys and Dak on Monday night, and they are the 25th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis. But with how good Sam has looked, they bring in Rashid Shaheed. I'm feeling real nicey about Sam Darnold as a low-end QB1 to high-end quarterback 2. Now we move to the Los Angeles Rams at the San Francisco 49ers. Now Matthew Stafford might as well have a chef's hat on because bro is cooking. Get him on America's Top Chef. Back-to-back games as a top 8 quarterback with 4 of his last 5 starts inside the top 8. Last week up against the Saints, he was 24 of 32 for 281 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now up against the 49ers, who are the 15th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis. I expect him to stay in the heat in the second highest projected point total of the week. Stafford is a great low-end quarterback 1 play. Plus, Sean McVay seems optimistic in the most recent report regarding Puka Nakua's rib injury. Something to follow, though. Mac Jones has been great all season in relief of Brock Purdy, who has now missed 5 straight games with the toe. And honestly, looking back, the team probably shouldn't have allowed him to come back in week number 4. And he's only played in 2 of 9 games this season. And he also probably should have been placed on the IR. After Sunday's win up against the Giants, Kyle Shanahan made it clear that Purdy will start when healthy, that this is Brock's team, and if he is good to go and everything is good, no decision needs to be made. He also said, though, the turf toe injury is unlikely to entirely go away by the end of the season, and that the measured approach to his return to practice work is meant to minimize its impact of its play, which to me isn't a great indicator that, wee woo, Brock Purdy's back, right? When you hear that, it doesn't sound like Brock Purdy's coming back this week, even with Mac being a respectable quarterback 2 type of guy. Against the Rams, who are the 28th best matchup for quarterbacks, I would prefer to leave him on the pine. Now we move to the Detroit Lions at the left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders. The penultimate game before, or the last game before Sunday Night Football, and then we got Monday Night Football as well. My Jared Goff sentiment will be the exact same every single week. Jared Goff is a good to great quarterback in real life. Jared Goff has the ability, if needed, to throw for 400 plus yards and 4 touchdowns. The problem is, based on how this offense is set up, Jared Goff does not need to do that to win games. So Jared Goff will more than likely float in the quarterback 13 to 20 range most weeks. This season, he has just a top 12 finish in 1 of 8 games. With 4 of 8 games outside the top 20, he is not the most sexy play this week due to the Commanders losing Jaden Stormy Daniels. So the odds of this game being a real shootout, where they got to go to war and chuck the pigskin a ton, seems very unlikely. The Commanders do allow the 4th most points to quarterbacks on a per-game basis, so Goff should be fine. But ultimately, I wouldn't bet all my gold doubloons on him having a top 12 showing. I got him as a high-end quarterback number 2. Marcus Mariota is now in after Jaden Daniels' tragic injury. Marcus Mariota, in all games he started this year, has been a top 19 quarterback with 2 of 3 games with 17 plus points. I am far from a Marcus Mariota truther, especially with the injuries going on around him. But in the 10th best matchup for quarterbacks on a per-game basis, he's fine. In the QB 15 to 18 range, if you're in a quarterback two quarterback league or super flex league, you're definitely happy with him being your quarterback too. Now we move to, cause you waited all day for Sunday night, the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Los Angeles Superchargers. Justin Herbert, the pervert, let his nuts hang up against the Titans last week in Tennessee with 3 games in a row as a top 4 quarterback. 19 completions on 29 attempts for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 INT, as well as 9 carries for 57 yards and a score. The Steelers defense is a fantastic magnifique chef's kiss matchup for Herbert as they allow the 5th most points to quarterbacks on a per game basis. Losing Joe Alt certainly sucks, and Trevor Penning isn't the biggest fix out there, but if Herbert keeps playing at such a high level, he is in such a great matchup. You gotta believe in the weapons around him. He's a top 6 quarterback this week. Aaron Rodgers has the 4th worst matchup on his plate for quarterbacks this week up against the Chargers. In better matchups, I am fine touting Aaron Rodgers as a start. He still appears to have it, but in this bad matchup, he kind of feels like a guy that finishes outside the top 20 at the quarterback position. Just 2 games inside of the top 12 all season long. No reason to roll him out there in this spot. Final game here, Monday Night Football, the Philadelphia Eagles at the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love was straight up diabolically bad up against the Panthers. 26 completions on 37 attempts for 273 yards and a INT, with another pick that should have occurred as he threw the ball straight to a defender in the defense, but that's why they play defense, not wide receiver, because the guy fucking dropped it. Just like Jared Goff, my talking point on Jordan, love me tender, love me sweet, is the exact same. He is on a team that can win games where he doesn't need to go crazy. They could score 4 touchdowns in this game, and Josh Jacobs could easily just score 3 of them, and Jordan Love is left with measly 1. They just lost their best red zone passing option in Tucker Kraft, which hurts like a butt cheek on a stick. Jordan Love should be a fine quarterback 14 to 18 option, but ultimately he's nothing special. You're never bricked up thinking about having Jordan Love start as your quarterback in the 16th best matchup for quarterbacks. I got him in that quarterback range of 14 through 18. Jalen, stop, it hurts, has been on a roll like he was the Pillsbury Doughboy. Prior to last week's bye, he ripped off 3 straight top 8 showings. While Vegas doesn't have this game at a super high total at 44.5, which is more of a mid-range over-under on the week, I do think this game has the ability to be a shootout. The Packers have a great defense and are a rough matchup for quarterbacks, allowing the 24th most points to quarterbacks on a per-game basis. But based on Hurts' ability to be a reliable top 8 option, you aren't going to sit him, especially since even if he struggles to pass the ball up against the Packers, he could easily just run in multiple touchdowns. He is a must-start top 6 quarterback for me on the week. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below like it owes you some money. I love you long time. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. See you guys tomorrow with the wide receiver start sit video. Leave a like on today's video if you haven't seen them already. Check out one of the... leave a like if you haven't seen it already. You watched the whole video. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys always. Have a great one. As always, good boy.